everyone please take their seats? We're going to start our final session of the day, what I think is usually the most exciting part of the day. No offense to our previous speakers, of course. So we always do this. It's a tradition of Techno Symposiums. We end off the day with a debate. And this debate will be quite interesting. We are talking about humanistic intelligence versus artificial intelligence. So that's going to be a doozy. And we have two very highly accomplished and highly opinionated scientists. So Dr. Joe Cafazzo has the privilege of trying to manage these two big brains. And so Dr. Joe Cafazzo has multiple titles, one of which is as Executive Director of Healthcare Human Factors at the University Health Network. And I would just like to say, good luck to you, Joe.
Thanks, Tracy. So when we were crafting this year's debate, we wanted to tap into this tension between the human side and the machine side. So, I mean, is this really a symbiotic relationship that we have with machines? The tension that we were coming across in it was pretty apparent in especially the last session. I saw some people squirming in the audience. How far are we going to get towards this digital human aspect? There's still a bit of that uncanny valley that we're seeing with a lot of these digital humans. But the truth of the matter is that perhaps we should be staying out of the way of machines altogether. I see some people tapping on their phones right now, and we are extremely low bandwidth machines, right? We're tapping at a couple of characters per second, and our phones are waiting for us, and they're doing prediction of what we're typing. They could probably replace us fairly easily, right? And not just in the menial tasks, but in a lot of professional tasks, as we know. And maybe that's a natural extension, a natural evolution towards automation. On the other hand, we're already seeing the ill effects of automation with artificial intelligence. We know that the models that we're training AI with is using very flawed data that we collected on patients, that is biased, that is incomplete, and they're learning from us, and they're learning bad things from us as well. So there's a clear tension here, and I can't think of a better debaters than the two scientists, engineers that we have here. First off, so we have Steve Mann, who is a professor of computer engineering at the University of Toronto. He's a visiting professor at Stanford University in the Department of Electrical Engineering, chair of the Silicon Valley Innovation and Entrepreneurship Forum, and he has a lot of notable qualifications and accolades. But really, what you need to know about Steve is that he was doing wearable computing as a child. He brought this into the 90s at MIT. Nicholas Negroponte defined it as that he created the wearables space back in the 90s, decades before Fitbit and Apple Watch, and certainly things like Google Glass. Steve was doing it way before anybody else, and has a lot of the fundamental technologies have been based on his research. Countering will be Milos Popovic, is the director of the KITE Research Institute at the Toronto Rehab Institute at the University Health Network. He's a professor at the Institute of Biomaterials and Biomedical Engineering at the University of Toronto. He's the fellow of the Canadian Academy of Engineering and a fellow of the Institute of Medical and Biological Engineering. And he's also one of the scientists and mentors to the terrific technologies that we saw this morning around MindMove in terms of the therapeutics around functional electrical stimulation for people who have upper limb are compromised on the upper limb paralysis. And so with that, so this debate has been framed along these lines. So do we have it up there? So let it be resolved that the development and use of artificial intelligence systems should take a humanistic intelligence approach, whereby machines and humans are intertwined so that there are checks and balances to avoid the negative effects and existential threat that unchecked AI may pose to society. So Steve will be arguing the pro side of this humanistic intelligence, and Milos the con. But we're going to vote first. Can we have So on Slido, you have the ability to vote. So should we be taking a more humanistic approach to this human-machine interface, or should we just let the machines do as they please? Is that a start? Oh, man. Okay, the machines are doing a bit better. So that looks like a steady state. So why don't we start with Steve now, who will argue the pro. Steve?
All right. Thank you. My name is Steve Mann, and I want to just log into my machine here. And so, humanistic intelligence is a form of AI. It's a what we call human in the loop AI. I was born here in this area, Hamilton, actually close to Toronto, and I lived here and grew up here, and then I was accepted at MIT, and I went down there and founded the MIT Wearable Computing Project. My mentor there was Marvin Minsky. He's widely considered the inventor of AI and the inventor of the machine learning field, and he was my mentor and gave me lots of inspiration and everything. And so together we kind of came up with a lot of thoughts on how AI should be done. And what we sort of have been proposing is humanistic intelligence that arises by having the human being in the feedback loop. And a lot of people have taken on this idea as a guideline of how AI should be done. You know, we see now things like explainable AI, we see accountability in AI, we see mechanisms and checks and balances to make sure that AI serves humanity. The IEEE, the world's largest technical society, has a slogan. Their slogan is, technology in service of humanity. And I was very much inspired by that slogan, and I thought that's really what we need to do with AI. AI needs to be an example of a technology that is in service of humanity. And so I look at, if we look at it as a feedback loop, if AI is serving us, it senses us and we sense it, and it forms a closed loop. If we look at our relationship with AI, human and machine, we see that humans have senses and effectors, and machines have sensors and actuators. And when we engage or interact with the AI, it senses us. That's a given. We call that surveillance, where we're being watched or sensed by these machines. But what I argue for is that there should also be surveillance. That is to say, where we can have a sense, we can audit these machines. We can sort of keep tabs on the machines and understand them. And this is where people talk about explainable AI. So if you look at those 6 signal flow paths, it's really the question is, the 3 and 4, the ones in the middle, are they both present, or is only one of them present? And so at the very core of humanistic intelligence is this notion of valence. Surveillance is a French word that in English it means oversight, seeing over. And if we take the politics off surveillance, we have just valence, just sensing or watching. And what we need, surveillance is another word, one that I made up actually, but you can Google it. It means undersight in English. And so if there is oversight, there should also be undersight. In other words, if the machines are watching over us, we should be able to underwatch the machines. We should be able to understand these machines that we're creating so that they're not just running open loop. And so these are what I call machines of malice, machines that watch us but don't reveal anything about themselves. And just as a fun little joke, I made a machine in my office. It's an intelligent digital light switch. And you know, people have referred to me as a digital human. You know, is Steve Mann a digital human? Well, I guess I got all these digits on me and everything. But so I made this light switch with a random delay, 3 to 5 seconds. One button, push on once and push it again to turn it off, and a random 3 to 5 second delay and a 10% packet loss. So it doesn't give you immediate feedback, it gives you delayed feedback. And I always said feedback delayed is feedback denied. So that's kind of a machine of malice. It's a smart machine that we can't quite understand. And my 6-year-old made it really simple, because people couldn't understand the difference, you know, between surveillance and surveillance. So she made this nice little drawing, And she said, well, surveillance is when we're being watched, and surveillance is when we can watch back. And so we're not talking, though, about the right to film the police. I mean, that right has already been won by other people. The police watch us, and we finally have the right to watch the police, and that's auditability and accountability, and that's well established. I'm talking here about the right for humans to understand machines and to design machines so that they can be understandable and auditable. So I'm talking here about surveillance systems, about machines that are designed so that they serve human needs. And wearable computing is one example that I put forth as an invention that provides this. We can look at the physical scale from the human all the way out to the edge of the universe. And if we have smart people, and then I argue in my book and writings that clothing is a building built for a single occupant. And then we have smart cars, which is just loose-fitting clothes, basically. And then finally, we have the smart city. And these are all, we can think of this as a continuum of a scale here. From the environment is that which surrounds us, and the environment is that which is not the environment, that's ourselves. And so there's the human in its environment, and the human itself we'll call the environment. And clothing marks the boundary between the environment and the environment. And so I've argued long ago that we should be environmentalists rather than environmentalists. And then on this axis, I talked about surveillance and surveillance. We should really stand for valence rather than surveillance. And up here, we got big data, and we got little data like blockchain. Big data is centralized, little data like blockchain, and those kinds of technologies are distributed. So what I argue is there's these three axes: valence, environment, and virtuality, and that really humanistic intelligence is a kind of AI that recognizes that we need that entire space and not just the boundaries. What we normally see is only surveillance, environmentalism, and big data. We also need surveillance, environmentalism, and little data. And so that's a more complete picture of how things work. I want to just give a couple of examples. You know, in my childhood, I invented this thing called wearable computer. And it's a computer that you wear that helps us, and I thought, well, we help us understand the world around us. There's all these things around us, sensors that are watching us and sensing us. And this thing here that I'm wearing is an example. It's a wave machine, so I've got a cell phone. I build my own cell phones, and it allows me to see the waves from the cell phone. So here, I can see the waves from my smartphone. They're stronger when I'm closer to the phone, and they're weaker when I'm further away. So you can see here the electromagnetic waves from the phone, and if I go through this table, than they are when they're not going through the table. If I try to go through this coffee cup full of Coke, you can see how much the Coke attenuates the radio waves. So it allows us to see and understand these signals and to have immediate instant feedback that allows us to really see and understand. That's one example of humanistic intelligence. It's sort of devices that allow us to see and understand. So we can audit this. We can audit these radio waves that surround us and that are otherwise hidden. And that's how we should build AI. We should build the future. I have a student, 10 years he's been my student. He's finally a professor now. I just chaired his thesis defense this morning. And his advisor is Jeffrey Hinton. And Jeffrey Hinton and I have been talking about this notion of explainable AI, auditable AI, picking up where Marvin Minsky and I left off on creating a future for AI that serves humanity by being able to have it sense. So a lot of healthcare, for example, involves sensing of us, sensors and sensing. This product here, I founded a company with my students called Interaxon, and we make a product called the Muse. This is our product. You can buy it in Best Buy stores all across North America or on Amazon.com. And this product allows us to understand and see inside ourselves. And so it's an example of AI and machine learning that serves, that allows us to understand our own bodies better, to serve the needs of healthcare and those sorts of things. This is another one of my inventions here along those lines, and this device is, there's a little tilt sensor in here, and it integrates the error. The tilt is the error, and so it integrates how much error there is. And as I don't know if you can hear it, there's a sound feedback too. It gives you immediate instant feedback. So if I hold it straight, and then as I tilt it, you know, it sounds really bad when you tilt it. And so this kind of makes you want to keep it straight. And so, okay, so now I'm holding it straight, and it's integrating how much air it is. 2, 3, 4, 5. I got my red dress on tonight, dancing in the dark in the dark. So it gives, it's AI, it's machine learning. It monitors, the application monitors my dietary intake. It monitors the food that I eat. And it keeps track of everything and exercise. And so the idea is you get immediate feedback of everything about your life. And so the idea is it's AI serving humanity and helping us live better. I'll shut this app off. By the way, afterwards, if any of you want to try to beat my score, I got an abs of about 5 degree seconds for 10 push-ups, but I'm sure any of you can beat this fat, lazy old professor. So I'll have this around if anyone wants to try an example of human in the loop AI.
Thank you, Steve. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. That's okay. 3, 2. Okay, very good. As Joe kindly set me, I'm going to be Darth Vader of this conversation. So let me start with some things which are kind of give you a perspective on some of the things that you will see soon. My name is Milos. So, locomotion, walking. What do you think, how long does it take you to learn to walk? Year, 2 years? Okay, it takes you 16 years to learn to walk. To have a proper gait, proper balance, it's exactly 16 years plus minus something. So each of you had to go through 16 years to figure out how to walk. Okay? This particular toy, they started building it in Boston in '91 when I started my Ph.D. It was a jumping stick. Looked ridiculous. We all died laughing. We were doing Ph.D. at that time. Fast forward 30 years later, you have this. She's doing all this lovely jumping. And you will say, you know, what's the point to spend 30 years to build this thing? Now, the problem is there's hundreds of you here in this room, and you essentially collectively spend 1,600 years trying to learn how to walk. I can build a robot, or hundreds of them, or millions of them, and download this in 15 minutes. Next one. This is Kasparov. Kasparov was destroying everybody in a chess field. Whenever he walks in the room, everybody gets high blood pressure. Nobody could win him for a long time. And so in 93, 97, this was his experience. He met Big Blue, and that was the end of chess. If you want to have something equivalent to that, you can get it done today for $10 on your iPhone, and you can play with the top master. My friend spent 15 or 20 years learning how to become a master, and by the time he became a master, he was ready to make money. This event happened, and he had to change his profession. I like this one, cooking. You will take trip to Marseille to go to this 3-star, no, it's actually 3 Michelin star place where you have this gentleman with a funky accent like me, and he will cook something for you, and it'll be amazing. You'll pay $300, $400 for a dish. And the next one with similar type of skill set may be in, I don't know, in Italy or another place. Now imagine this. You take one of these things, and you abuse them as an engineer until they come to the level to make dish A to the same level as a Michelin star person. Every robot in the universe will generate Michelin star dish for $15. Maybe you won't have Candle's experience and you won't have to drive 600 kilometers to get there, but all of you who buy this robot, which hopefully I will manufacture, will have the Michelin star dish at fingertips. Now, a little bit scary stuff. When I was young and silly, I served military. I didn't do that because I was not in US military. And when you want to protect this type of thing at that time, in 90s, 80s, you'll have some sophisticated weapons, and when an airplane comes, you shoot the weapon, and all these dynamics which you've seen in Top Gun and other silly movies of that type. The universe has changed. I can send 3,000 of these things against the airplane carrier. Airplane carrier cannot deal with this. This technology exists today. And DARPA has been working very hard to come up with artificial intelligence to protect its boats from the Russian swarming technology. And vice versa, they're doing the same game. The interesting part of it is there's no human in a loop. This machine, which is one of the many machines which is protecting us from this swarming technology, has no human in a loop. Putting a human in a loop will put us, all of us, in jeopardy. This is a good example in which you and I and our safety depends on a system that we have no control over. And we like to think of ourselves as a supreme, intelligent beings, and we are the masters of the universe. We're top of the food chain. Okay? And even when you are on top of the food chain, more often you look like that than as somebody who is in charge. It is not inconceivable that in very near future, whatever that is, it may not be in 5 years or 10, but it may be in 50, 100, 200 years, you'll have something which doesn't look like human, which is connected to other similar systems and can deliver the cooking, manufacturing, space exploration, thinking at a much higher level than we are able to do today. Okay? So difference between these two organisms is only DNA difference, is only 1.2%. I haven't seen you guys sitting around with chimps and spending quality time trying to understand what they think, what they feel, what their emotional status. I mean, there's some of us who are noble and have done this, like Jane Goodale, but most of us, we may go to the zoo, take our iPhones, take a few pictures, and go away, because we're not really interested. So I kind of have a feeling that you will have some eyes, Jane Goodales, who are a bit nice and kind to us because they're just trying to figure out the physiology and mental status. But the moment these things become more sophisticated, we're out of the game. And there's no way to stop that. You can try, you can do legal stuff, but some other guy in China is going to do a little piece of software which is going to make a jump forward. And then some other guy in Serbia will do another piece of software and jump, and a little bit of 3D printing here. And eventually, that evolution will bring us to that state. Many of us are talking about the cyborg situation. This is not going to happen. We're going to do a little bit for medical purposes, brain implants and stuff like that. That's why we invested in Crania project. Otherwise, my executive vice president will shoot me for $60 million investment into neuroprosthesis without any return on investment. But long term, whenever you go into the brain system and you try to record something, you actually change it. And changing the brain system is a problem, right? So we will have some devices that help you with memory and other things, but eventually it is much faster, much easier to build an engineered device that will have all the intelligence, and you don't have to deal with the human, which is anyways complicated. Each human has its own issues and whatever, right? It's same as with airplanes. We looked at the birds, we were excited how the birds are flying, we wanted to mimic them. Do you have any airplanes which fly like birds? I don't think so. Are they faster than birds? Yes. Are they more efficient? Yes. Are they sexier looking? Doesn't matter. They're better. So in summary, I think this is what's going to happen. So I'll let this video run, And this is my prediction, okay? So this is how we behave right now with AI. We test these systems, we spray them, we abuse them, try to see how their control systems work, how they manage balance, locomotion, how they react to unusual conditions, right? And of course, once we get them to the level that they're behaving properly, we want them to serve us infinitely, right? And be patient there while we do what we normally do. That's our vision of the universe. And I think this is what's going to happen at the end. So that's how I said.
Okay, so it's rebuttal time. Let's start off, Steve. So this with the human in the middle, the human in the loop issue. Like there are situations that are happening now that have occurred over the last few years, where people are manipulating, being in the loop, and for instance, in the situation of manipulating elections by being in the loop and using social media and the algorithms that are in social media to amplify false narratives, misinformation, and all those things. That's a consequence of the human in the loop, because there's not necessarily the morality of that system with the human in the loop. So we have malicious actors. So that hybrid is a problem. Wouldn't you argue that we could put morals onto machines and avoid those sorts of situations?
Well, I guess the thing is that AI should be auditable. That's kind of what I'm arguing for, is that what you could end up with is a system where somebody decided to rig the election machine, and it's closed source and we can't see what's going on in there. Like, let's say it was like and it wasn't auditable. I'd have trouble with that. I mean, the example that he had of the gun, it can kill people better without any oversight or undersight by humans. I find that troubling, that we design robotic guns that just shoot people without any way to audit them, or without any way to understand how they're working or what their motives are. How can I trust the motives of this robotic mechanism? Sure. And so I think what I'm advocating for here, and what Marvin Minsky and others, and what Jeffrey Hinton, is in agreement with too. I think a lot of us feel that AI needs to be able to be understood in some way. We need it to be comprehensible, understandable, explainable, auditable, and that if we build these machines of malice, which are unauditable, surveillance, absolute power breeds absolute corruption. And if we give these machines absolute power over us, then we're likely going to see absolute corruption. And perhaps it might not even be the machines themselves that turn against us. It could be a nefarious programmer of the machine that decides to use that unauditable, closed-source nature, the secretive nature of the surveillance, to achieve their own political agenda.
Milos?
I mean, I agree with Steve in the notion and in his opinion.
You're not supposed to agree in a debate.
No, I agree. Let me start. I have to be kind to him, right? He's a lovely man. I have to be kind to him. So, yes, I agree with that. But the fundamental thing is, when you watch how these things are evolving, like when you look at the Brexit elections, Brexit situation, there was 2 or 3 people who enabled it. They knew exactly what they're doing. They enabled that to happen. The social media was used to get Brexit to happen the way it happened. Yes, in retrospect, we had documentaries, and they're feeling really bad about it. But Brexit has occurred, and we are now a couple of years back and discussing what kind of impact that had. So there's sufficient number of stupid humans who are going to do something profoundly stupid and enable device to do this, okay? So it's not, we will not going to stop. Like this gentleman in China who went and changed edited DNA and then put in the baby, and there's a whole chaos going on behind. But he has done it. He got on TV, and then he ended up in jail after that or whatever. Maybe he's not among living anymore. I don't know. It's immaterial. What is material? Somebody's going to do it because they want to be the first to do it. And then the cat is out of the bag. And those of you who have cats, you can't get them back. So this is where I'm coming from. Whether I like it or not, it doesn't really matter. It's going to happen. Any other unpleasant question?
Yeah, I guess I don't agree that it's a binary cat in the bag or cat out of the bag. I think when we design these systems, we can design them to be auditable, and we can see that as it's not perfect. We're not always going to be able to audit or check or verify this AI, but at least what we can do is try. We can make an honest effort to try and create systems that serve humanity, and occasionally there'll be nefarious actors that provide guns that serve their own interest and shoot people. Somebody might design, a system that just hangs people or whatever, justice served by AI without any human oversight or undersight. But we can try and, it's not like a cat getting out of a bag. I don't think that's a good analogy. I think that if there's bad AI out there, we can try and get rid of it and replace it with good AI. That is to say, replace it with AI that serves humanity, that's auditable.
See, when we had first PCs or first computers, right, nobody actually thought, and they put a network together, nobody thought this company was going to throw viruses into that whole system. But one of the first things which came up were actually viruses for computers. And they're evolving and doing their things. And there's a whole industry behind creating viruses and malware and whatever, right? So we can be emotionally attached that we want to control the machines, that we want to be in a position that we run the show, but it's going to escape, sadly. So we're actually part of the evolutionary process. We are changing our DNA, we are changing what we're doing, and the machines are the next step. When we come to the point that artificial intelligence is so much superior than us, they will do same as Jane Goodall has done with monkeys. It's going to take nice pictures, talk to us, try to figure out what's going on. But they'll be in control. They'll keep us in cages, or maybe not even cages. They'll just stop feeding us. Or just tolerate you like you tolerate, raccoons in your backyard. Oh, yeah, fine, it's a raccoon, just don't touch it, right? Let it be. Which is actually not a bad outcome, but they will be the ones who will come up with the solutions how to pour all the energy out of the sun to power the intelligence, go to another star. Because packing a human and fly the human to another solar system, like mission impossible, because just we cannot take all these G's and whatever, right? AI, you can put it, pack it, done. Next problem, right? So, and these AIs can create themselves in a very different form, in different shape, in different locations for different purposes. And when they come up with a new solution technology, how they're going to look like, they're going to print themselves. They're going to manufacture next generation right there. And as they improve, they can constantly do it at a much faster rate than DNA allows you. DNA and natural selection has a time constant which is not really favorable for exponential growth. AI and additive manufacturing can do that very easily. So, like in that movie which, what's his name? Kubrick made, How I Start Loving the Bomb and this stuff. I think you have to come to the point of how I stop worrying about AI and start liking it, because it's going to happen. Whether you're going to be part of that, or you're going to fight for it or against it, somebody's going to move it forward, because it's too exciting. It's so much fun to do this. Having a robot running around, walking on its own, that's fun. You enjoy the video. This is cool. Look at this, right? So what about 55 of them running together playing soccer? So that's the next stage, right? So our curiosity is going to bring us to that point. And I'm one of those corporates.
So I'm not suggesting we should not have space travel, unpersoned space travel. I'm simply saying it should be auditable, it should be accountable. When we're sending this AI astronaut, this sort of virtual astronaut into space, we should have a way of making sure that we can keep track of it, make sure that it serves human interests. That in no way weakens AI, in my mind. I think it makes it stronger. I think that the auditable, accountable AI is stronger. As an example of viruses, viruses fester in closed source universes. On my Linux system, on my laptop there running Linux, I've never ever had a virus on there, never. It's the many eyes make shallow bugs, and being open source, it basically is inoculated against most viruses because it's understandable. People can understand it. Even if I can't understand it myself, at least some of my students can understand it. If it's behaving strangely, I can find somebody who can understand it, but try and do that with a closed source system. And imagine these AI that nobody can understand, and we have all these AI teams of soldiers running around with guns shooting people, and nobody can understand how it works. That's not a world that I want to live in. I want to live in a world where at least we can try and understand, humans can try and understand how these robots are working and keep it serving humanity.
So Steve, is that even going to be possible in the future, this notion of auditable AI? Like, won't there be a tipping point where we just cannot fathom or understand, and we're going to be incapable of auditing a system such as that is as complex and sophisticated as that?
Well, whether or not that's a separate question. One is it inevitable, and the other, is it desirable? So let me answer those questions separately. One is, I don't think it's desirable to have AI that isn't auditable by humans, that can't be controlled, that can't be at least understood by the world's experts working in collaboration. Ideally, even if it's difficult to understand it, it should be understandable with the help of other machines. In other words, I should be able to use one machine to help me understand another machine. So there's a sense of allegiance. I should be able to take responsibly designed machines that we know are serving humanity and use those machines to debug other machines. Code has gotten so complex that no one person can understand it. I can't understand all the Linux device drivers in there, even though I teach a course on how to write Linux device drivers. But at least I know that I can get a combination of machine intelligence and human intelligence that can audit anything that's suspect, that needs to be audited.
So you're suggesting now we have to create bots to monitor the bots in order to avoid the bots? Right?
Well, more generally, I would say we're going to see humans using technology to check technology. Even when you debug code, you're using another piece of code to debug the code. So it's very seldom that humans just look at executable machine code. More often than not, they're looking at something that they're using some tool, some software tool to analyze other software.
Is there anybody in the audience who wants to challenge the debaters? Allison. Is there a mic for Allison? Steve is going to give you a mic.
Okay, so in terms of what's written there in the resolution, I'm not sure why you are connecting the need to be intertwined with the need to have checks and balances. I thought this debate was going to be like a fish and a cat, and they can maybe check up on each other without being intertwined. So I'll put that out there. Why are we focusing so much on the checks and balances and not the intertwined part?
Well, the checks and balances are how we're intertwined. Technology functions as an extension. Marshall McLuhan sort of wrote how technology functions as an extension of our mind and body. It's kind of, technology in general is humans' technological clothing is sort of this extension of ourselves. And in that sense, they're inextricably intertwined. Technology is generally, at least at first, it's made by humans. Not too many compilers now are written by humans. They're mostly generated by other compilers, like Lex and Yak, yet another compiler. Most languages are written themselves, so most humans don't actually write computer languages. They get computers to write computer languages for them. But at least at its outset, it sort of started from human endeavor, even though it's kind of got a mind of its own to some degree. But it's still, there's still this element of human connection to the technology. And I think that's what's really important.
David.
Yeah, so I guess what's the objective objective, I think.
Yeah, I would say the objective, at least as I see it, is technology in service of humanity. That's kind of, I think, where AI should be heading.
I got the impression
So
from Milos,
let
he
me,
doesn't-
you know, our ancestors and whatchamacallit, and other branches of our ancestors supposedly coexisted. So if you read the history of human race, what we did really better than them, we ate them faster than they could eat us. And that's how we prevailed. So why would artificial intelligence, once it realizes that it's more intelligent than us and more capable than us, why would they be kind to us? They could, from sympathy, right? But once they realize they're running the show, there's no way to stop it.
But aren't you assuming then that the AI methods will outperform the
Yes,
human
on every
capacity?
level. On every
That's
level.
a fundamental tenet.
On every level. And not only that, from that point, you have exponential growth further. And that's what's exciting and scary.
So in all cases, only the computer would be better than the human, or any
It
hybrid.
doesn't have to look as a computer, right?
Or,
It can have whatever form
The
or
non-human
shape,
form.
but it'll be non-human. It will bring our DNA, intelligence, understanding of the universe, knowledge, all these wonderful things which we have been doing for the last, 100,000 years, and we'll build on that.
But to what definition of success?
Whatever they decide is their definition of success. Because we don't count anymore. They have their definition of success. And they will drive the definition of success until to get to the point when something else supersedes them and says, these guys were really cute, but watch us.
Steve, do you agree?
Well, what I'm saying, see, I think this is skirting the question, really. The question is should rather than will. And I think to stick to the point of the message here, my argument is that these technologies should serve humanity. Now, Ray Kurzweil and I, together with Marvin Minsky, Ray Kurzweil is the chief engineer of Google, and the three of us wrote this paper, the Society of Intelligent Valence, back in 2013 to address this existential threat of AI. And there's a whole bunch of people at the Singularity University, including Ray Kurzweil and a bunch of others, and I've been working with those people quite a bit. And we're looking at this existential threat to humanity posed by AI, and we're saying two things. One is we're asking the should question, which I think is very relevant, and the other is will it happen? Is it inevitable? Like if you say, well, murder is inevitable, that doesn't mean that it should happen. It means we should try to prevent murder, even though it's inevitable that some people there'll be some shootings. It doesn't mean we should just start handing out free guns on the street and let everybody have a free-for-all just because there's already some murder and we can't stop it, so might as well join it. I sort of don't buy into that argument, but I think that I'm a little bit scared of this AI gun thing shooting around. If you put those on every street corner, there's this AI trying to decide who gets shot and who doesn't with no fair trial. I'd probably have an issue with that, but I think we got to keep in mind the should and at least aim for something. Whether we succeed or fail is a separate question and maybe a separate debate.
One more question. Just one more question.
So just picking up on the inevitability versus the should, my question is around, do you think you can? We're already faced, even today, there are questions where deep learning algorithms, neural nets are providing answers or recommendations around use of chemotherapy in a patient or not. And there are arguments going on whether or not one should be able to trust such or even act on such a decision without really understanding it as to how that conclusion was arrived at. And with some of the deep learning neural nets that currently exist today, it's not possible to see that. And by extension, once these become more complex than the human brain, is it possible for that to ever be understandable by a human?
you know, you see these things where there's a book that I was reading, like Automating Discrimination. Like you see AI, when it starts to matter to humans, when AI becomes a form of surveillance, which turns its gaze selectively more on black people, more on the poor. Surveillance becomes a tool sometimes which allows the powerful to monitor the vulnerable. And I think there's something wrong with that. And I don't want to see AI turn into that same tool of mass surveillance that sees humans, that maybe treats humans the same way as it treats black people and the poor, and all of humanity be subjugated by this surveillance gaze of AI. I think there should be a way. Laws are on the side of it and should continue to be on the side of humanity. That is to say, when these things mess up, you know, somebody's accountable. There has to be some way. We can't just have all these self-driving cars driving around killing pedestrians and nobody being responsible. Oh, you got run over by this thing. Oh, I guess that's too bad. You know, there's nobody to sue. You know, it's like, okay, that's just an AI. Well, I guess we can't do anything about it. I kind of would have a problem with that way of thinking.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I guess this sort of humanistic intelligence approach, I'm trying to understand that. I mean, Asimov, you know, had sort of rules, but is that humanistic intelligence or is it just rules? If we believe that there's humanistic intelligence and then artificial intelligence, I mean, is the humanistic intelligence really the part, or should we just have rules?
Well,
and that's why I don't quite understand why it has to be a humanistic intelligence, because I've seen humans do a lot of stupid things. So, I mean, is it more like rules, or there's some other intelligence that we should be?
Yeah, we wrote a
programming
code
into
of
these things?
ethics. You know, Asimov had the 3 rules, and so we wrote a code of ethics, a similar code of ethics based on this humanistic intelligence concept that says that there should be equivalence, what we call equivalence, which is a balance between surveillance and sousveillance. That is to say, when these machines are sensing us and monitoring us and tracking everything we do, we should also be able to track the machines. That's the equivalent principle. That's one of the fundamental tenets of the code of ethics on AI that we wrote, you know, the code of ethics on these machines. So I think it's similar. What we wrote was very similar to Asimov's laws, and a bunch of us got together. I'm one of the founding members of the IEEE Council on Extended Intelligence, the CXI, which is, there's about 50 of us AI researchers around the world that the IEEE, the world's largest technical society, brought together to address this issue. And what we're tasked with is really making sure that there's an ethical framework for AI. And so that's the basic idea, is many of us are looking at HI as a framework for an ethically based form of AI.
But here's a fundamental flaw to that. Each of our societies has different ethics values. What is the ethics values in Western society is not fitting the same ethic values in Russia or Kazakhstan or South Africa. So what it means that you may have your ethics values and you try to impose on your AI your ethics values, but you know, somebody else has different ethic values, creates an AI with different ethic values, and they're not talking to each other.
Well,
and they don't have to talk to each other. And if this other system prevails, you're out.
Well,
and your ethics values are irrelevant.
We're an international organization, so we sort of represent what we hope is a reasonably balanced narrative from all humanity. So we're very sensitive to EDI, you know, the equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we make sure that we're represent a diverse population.
So how many North Koreans are in your committee? None. So let's call North Korean guys and ask them, how do they feel about our ethics code? They don't even want to talk to you. They have other agenda. So I'm not suggesting that evil AI is going to come from North Korea. I'm not going to go that way, but just giving a flavor what is the reality of the universe, you know?
I'll choose AI designed by the rest of the world, maybe. if you don't mind.
I would love for this to go on, don't you? But we have to start wrapping. So can we get the poll back up? Let's see how we're doing now, because I think at the beginning it seemed like the humanistic intelligence approach was prevailing. Let's see after the debate now how we're doing. So Milos was arguing for welcoming our AI overlords. And Steve was arguing that we needed more surveillance, whether it was possible or not, to be auditable. And did we move the needle at all? I mean, I think Milos lost me when he compared us to raccoons being ignored. So it looks like we haven't changed much, but we were entertained, and we have lots to think about. So can we thank Steve and Milos for a great debate for Techno 2019?
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you.